Morning everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair, otherwise known as McCulloch Hell at the moment. Why would I say that? Well, because I've already had this saw apart, and now I get to do it again. So, the initial problem was some of these screws, well, all of them, that hold this side of the fan housing were busted off in the oil tank, so it was far easier to replace the oil tank than try to extract those screws. Actually, I tried drilling them, and they were hard enough and the metal around them soft enough that, well, we know where that went. So, that's neat. Unfortunately, that fuel hose leaks too. Yeah. Anyway, unfortunately, had this thing apart, replaced that tank with one that Kent dropped off for me. That's another Kent saw. And cool, just went for it. Well, this automatic oil pump wasn't working, so I reached in here to grab the oil line. Well, guess what? Somebody put the wrong size hose in there. Now, I'm not taking credit for that one. That was done quite some time ago. But what appeared to be a good fit when you put a pick tool on it and try and pull it out is not. So there's no access, there's no way to get to it. Got to take that damn tank off again. So figured you guys might as well see this too. There's a lot of these saws floating around. The 610, 605, 37, 34, Timber Bear, 650, 655. Promac 5700 if you happen to get one of the last ones. Anyway, they're all about the same. Not 100%, but close enough. So I pulled these two big self-threading plastic screws out of the handle, and I've got it out of the way. Now this saw is late enough that it uses Torx head screws, which I'm actually grateful for. They're a lot easier to work with, in my opinion, than the old flat blade style. Less likely to strip out, and if they do, you can usually get them extracted by hammering an appropriate size Allen head bit in there for the purpose of at least getting it out. Yeah, that fuel hose isn't in as good a shape as I thought it was, so it's going to get replaced. Well, this is a part two. So you could almost remove this fan without pulling the starter, the fan housing and tank cover, but this one screw is right underneath there. And yeah, you probably could reach in, but realigning it would be a pain in the ass and just not worth it. Now, I was happy that I had all three of these screws in stock with the Torx head, and they are all different lengths, and you don't want to mix them up. That's part of how they end up broken, cross-threaded, every other dang thing. I don't know what happened to the original ones in this, why they were all three broken off. McCulloch put, Loctite on them, but it's not like it was an obscene amount. You got your screw back here, and the tank will come off. You got to get your fuel hose disconnected from the carburetor here. Crack the cap, relieve the pressure. Close the choke. Get that out of the way. Okay. I don't know where that's. Well, figures. Those damn McCulloch stuck with the molded hose concept where the grommet. Where'd the other screw go? There it is. This molded kind of grommet that's part of the fuel hose. And they were well known to shrink and leak, just like that. So we'll pull that out on reassembly and put a grommet in there. Alright. I literally was just in here. That's annoying. Oh well. Alright. This bottom strap, get it out of the way so you can get the muffler out of the way. I drained that oil tank, but I forgot to put the cap back in. We'll see how well I drained it by how big of a puddle I have on the bench when we're done with this. The whole reason I was pulling the hose out was because the oiler wasn't working. Now, I didn't put a huge amount of oil in this, and it's possible that I didn't put enough, but I just wanted to double check that filter, and boy, what a mistake that was. Although the reality is, if it was able to come off that easily, it wouldn't have taken any time at all for the damn thing to rattle off while Kent was running it. So it's better to catch it before it gets out of the shop. Alright. Confused as to why there's so much oil down here. I don't know if that gasket was leaking on the oil pump or not. You do have to get the coil out of the way, at least loose. I'm cheating pretty substantially here because I don't want to take anything more loose than I have to. So what we're going to do, you can see you can get to the two tank bolts down here easily enough. I can get the rattle gun on them. Up here it'll have to be a open end wrench, but it's still, in my opinion, much faster. Oop. I'm trying to remember what size. Most of these fasteners are metric. Most. Can't remember if that was a 12. Yeah. Now McCulloch does have one neat feature, and that's these clutches. The nut is reverse thread, but then it's a tapered shaft. So they come off a hell of a lot easier than most of those Homelite clutches. No special tool needed, at least not on this style of saw. And I think that was true for all the 10 series. Nah, no leak here. I thought maybe there was a spot on the tank that I just didn't get sealed up, but as much oil's on this side, that may have happened. So then, you got to get your automatic oil pump out of the way. That, I'll have to look at the IPL. That doesn't seem right. But it appears that it's only that O-ring being pushed into the housing that's retaining that in place. But you definitely need to get your manual oiler rod out of the pump body before you try and pull it off. Now what I was afraid of is there is a passage through the bottom of the crankcase here that has to stay open where this tank meets up to the crankcase, and if that gets filled with sealer, you can foul up your oiler function. And I was hoping that that wasn't what I had done, and I guess now I get to find out. will say that I don't see any signs of the red oil that I was using up here, and I tried that manual pump pretty extensively. That's why I'm leading to believe that this either rattled loose from the minute I had it running, or it was, yeah, I don't know. Because I would have thought the manual oil pump would have worked regardless of whether I'd plugged that little auto hole. But anyway, these are a size 10. And because of the silicone, or Moto Seal that I used here, the odds that you're going to spin it, yeah, I'm barely moving this one by hand. McCulloch's original stuff was something similar, and you coat the threads of these bolts real well with it because you don't want it leaking around there. So spinning them by hand is usually mostly wishful thinking. I'm getting a little progress on this one, but it's a long enough bolt. It takes about 5 weeks to get it out. So the other way of handling this would be to take the throttle handle completely off and take the carburetor chamber off, and then you'd have direct access to these two bolts to use your socket. And who knows, maybe I spend as much time doing it this way as I would doing it that way. But one thing I try to adhere to with antique chainsaws is disturb as little as possible, simply because you run less risk that way of damaging a hard to find gasket or breaking some other part, having a screw break, whatever. So yeah, that's just my philosophy. These saws had quite a few variations. I think they first appeared around 78 or 79. 605 and 610 was the first batch, and then there's the high performance 650, which was the same displacement as a 610, but supposedly the shape of the piston or the combustion chamber was a little different, and more power from the same cubic inches. And then you had the Beaver 3.7 and 3.4, which is what this is. So that should be a 54 cc versus 58 or 60, excuse me. And then at the very end of the run, they had a ProMac 5700. Dummy. The number 10 works a lot better. It wasn't as tight as I would have liked. Okay. I'm going to have a big mess to clean up. All that Moto Seal that I put on there yesterday gets to come off today. But you can see I did not plug the two passages I was worried about. One being this one here, and then one being up here. And I'll be honest, I don't know what the hell they're for, but I've learned the hard way on some of the home lights, don't plug passages. The pickup barb is right there. That's definitely not tight enough. So looks like it was going to hang low enough. So again, I don't know why it wasn't working, but I got to get all this cleaned up, put a new hose in there. I don't know if I can get the diaphragm. Actually, that's just the gasket. I don't know if I can get that off to see what's down there without destroying it or not, but when I figure something out, we'll come back. Okay, so got this pretty much cleaned up, ready to reseal. Got a next size down hose on here that is not going to come loose. This is the oil pump outlet hole, and that matches up to that little hole right there, which is the oil, that hole. That is the oil pump delivery passage. So that's where the oil flows through. So my instinct of you don't want to plug that is 100% accurate. So I've cleaned up the old Moto Seal, all of 24 hours old. Gotten as much oil out of there as I think I need to. Cleaned up both gasket surfaces with acetone. And now we're going to put a fresh batch in here and get it sealed back up. You don't need a lot, especially around that oil pump delivery hole. I'll go back and clean that up. This other hole goes nowhere, so I'm less concerned about that. And by nowhere, I mean on the opposite side, there is nothing drilled for it. Enough. At least that's enough material. Alright, so you want it to be smooth and even. And it doesn't have to be, you don't need to trowel this out, but you want coverage across what you're trying to gasket. So a spot like that right there would have been a problem. The rest of that looks pretty damn good. That's our oil pump delivery hole. Looks good. I'm going to lose that before I make a mess of a nice new part. Alright. This is the kind of tricky part. You almost need a third set of hands. Get her lined up and drop it as much as possible straight down. I had to drag that a little bit. But you want to drag it, damn it, as little as possible so that you can get this thing started. Come on, damn it. You know, this is really starting to piss me off. Okay. Get another one in there. The reason I'm holding it like this is I cleaned the main portion of the tank out real well. Well enough. And the crankcase back, half back down here, still has some remnants of oil and such in it. I want to give this stuff plenty of time to set up before it really gets hit with much oil. Because, in case you guys hadn't caught it, I don't want to do this again. If there's still a problem with the pump, I'll deal with it from the top end here. I can now be 100% certain that the filter and hose are not my problem. So what I'm going to try to do is get these basically hand tight. And then once it's dried for an hour or so, I'll come back and torque them down. That'll let it really set up, build a little resistance to being squished, so it should make a hell of a good seal. The other thing that I'm going to do this time is to be 100% certain. Come on. First I'm going to learn how to use a wrench. I'm going to blow some air through the oil delivery passage just to make sure that I don't have any sealer obstructing it. Which I'm sure I don't, but I'd like to be 100% sure. So, you guys get the routine. There's no reason for you to watch the whole process of screwing this down 1/4 turn at a time. We'll come back. While I'm waiting for that moto seal to dry on the tank, I'm doing the chain. Look at how jacked up these teeth are. Just phenomenally hammered. And there's the tooth I just sharpened. Right there. Look at that. Tell me that son of a bitch isn't sharp. One of the viewers on the channel here turned me on to these, what are they, a Molmab resinoid wheel. Grinds really, it grinds a lot cooler, so it doesn't leave a bunch of trail of melted material there, just one really sharp tooth. I don't know how many strokes with a hand file it would take to do that, but I'll show you how long it takes to do it with this this grinder. Hadn't really planned on doing this, but what the hell. And done. I take multiple passes like that to avoid heating it up, but again with this wheel, it really doesn't matter. Working awful nice. Maybe low on fuel. Yeah, it is. Can't turn it to that side. But that's okay. I'm comfortable that it's running good now. I've had it run a couple times. Had plenty of fights. No big surprise. Oiler worked this time. So I'm going to have to assume that that other hose fell off like the minute it started. But the biggest issue was this chain brake was oversensitive. So even that's pretty sensitive. But before, when I'd rev it up, it would just boom. So there's no adjustment. But this big coil spring back here, you can manipulate the ends of it just a little bit. And then I roughed up the cam that's in here so that it would hold this a little bit better. And that's hard steel, so my files would barely touch it. But yeah, Kent, I think this one's finally ready to rock and roll.